Welcome to Leaders Creating Ruckus, where we explore how disrupting the status quo can create long-lasting opportunities. I am your host, Aashi Arora. I'm an executive coach where I help professionals learn how to rise in leadership. I bring to my clients as well as to my listening audience over 20 years of leadership experience, and I'm excited to share all that I can. So if you're searching for ways to get noticed for your next promotion, wanting to launch your own business, or integrate work better into your life, then tune in each week. I promise you will hear from amazing leaders who have so many pearls of wisdom to give us. And today we have one of my dear friends and one of my prior coaches, Chris King. Chris King is a peak performance executive coach, author, and speaker, as well as the CEO of Status Flow, an organization that works with individuals and businesses to set the condition and behaviors for flow, aka the zone. And he doesn't just change organizations and individuals, he transforms them. Chris's background is working in technology, healthcare, and broadcasting, and is educated in spiritual psychology. He has trained and collaborated with the very best in flow research, including the Flow Research Collective, the Flow Genome Project, David Bayer, Brendan Butchard, Dr. Andrew Huberman. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And he regularly trains with retired U.S. Army Special Forces and U.S. Navy SEALs. Chris has been a featured panelist for Allison Armstrong's Understand Men Celebrating Women seminars, and has been a featured presenter for many professional networking organizations. Chris's first book, recently launched, Renegotiate Your Existence, unlocks your impossible life, and is now available on Amazon, something we will definitely get into. Hey, Chris, welcome to our show.
So good to see you, Aashi. Thanks for having me.
This is so exciting. I've been wanting to get you on the show for a while, so I'm really excited that we got to make this happen and that you're here today with everyone.
My pleasure. Couldn't wait to do it.
Awesome. So Chris, my listeners, they're hearing all of this, but we want to get to know who Chris is first. So tell us about where you grew up, your background, how you got into leadership, wherever you'd like to start.
Yeah, it's sort of a long and stumbling story, as I think is true with a lot of business owners and certainly a lot of coaches. I grew up on the west side of Los Angeles, and I've been in Southern California almost my entire life. And I've worked in a lot of different careers, doing a lot of different jobs in a lot of different industries. And it wasn't until almost 10 years ago now that I finally think I realized that I'm just not capable or qualified to work for other people. And so I better figure out how to build a company.
I love that awareness and realization.
Right? Yeah, I'm not good with coloring inside the lines,
Please continue.
Well, I mean, okay. I'll tell you the real story here is that I grew up in a very privileged neighborhood in a very scary house. My oldest sister died when she was 11 years old, and so I was raised in a house of grief and rage and abuse and addiction. And I built my life on those pillars. And as you can imagine, that's not exactly a stable foundation. And so after, a marriage to a woman with bipolar disorder, and then a second marriage, a second failed marriage on the rebound after that, I decided maybe I need to figure some things out and kind of get my shit together. Right. And so, and that was about the time that I got out of the broadcast world, again, another very unstable place. Landed a job in the Neuroscience Institute of a hospital, and so I got an accidental education in neurobiology there, and that's when I was doing my work in spiritual psychology, and then I started training with the retired SEALs and doing all the mindset stuff, and so I decided at one point, it's like I got fired from my last job at a tech company after the hospital, and I thought, well, do I don't know, learn how to do commercial real estate or something, or do I do something that really means something to me? And the latter was the option for me, because I'd been in the soul sucking job that didn't mean anything. I'd done that before, and it doesn't really do any good. But when I started this, I had no physical address. I owned almost nothing. And that you hear about these people that started start their companies in their garage. Well, I started mine out of the trunk of a car because I didn't even have a garage. So I was just living off my friends' couches, really, that were going to let me, let me do that and feed me while I built a company. So that's the long and the short of how I got here.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. And thank you for being so candid, I mean, super candid. I know that in reading your book, I know we're going to kind of jump around a little bit here, but I was thinking about some of this that you shared even so openly in your book, which is phenomenal, by the way, right? Really, really mind-blowing, very, very open.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of those stories is around this, this feeling of, I guess I'll just call it homelessness. That's my term, but I mean, tell us about that experience and how that, I mean, did you know before then that you wanted to launch this company? Like, how did that transition kind of flow for you?
No, it's funny in retrospect, it wasn't like a dream I had. I have yet to meet the coach that had an easy path. I mean, I think that's why we become coaches. It's like therapists. My partner's a therapist and she's a therapist because she screwed up. I mean, that's why we do it, right? So I think it was somebody that said something to me when I was in my coursework doing the spiritual psychology stuff. Somebody had asked me if I was a therapist or a coach or something, and I said no. Why? I said, you're really good at this, and that just kept getting reflected to me. And at the last job that I ultimately got fired from, by a friend of mine, he said that I was just doing the wrong thing with my life, and I was a marketing director at a tech company, and he was just like, this is not where you belong. And so I sort of heard that, and there I was, unemployed again. It's like, well, do I do the safe route or the perceived safe route, right? Get a job and the paycheck and the insurance. And I'm like, you know what? Look, I've already been in the position of all the stuff that I am facing dealing with right now. My credit's already tanked and gone to shit. I've already been, thrown out by, and had a relationship fall apart. I've already been fired. I've already like all the bad stuff. It's like, well, okay, so I don't have a physical address and everything I own is in a mid-sized sedan that's falling apart. Well, okay, I got that. I got a sport coat and I got a network. Let's see what I can build with this. And like I said, it was either that or phone it in and attach myself to a lifestyle, doing a job that I, didn't love, that I was okay at, to ultimately, 2-3 years down the road, go, this sucks. I don't want to do this. Now I got to destroy my life again. Like, no. I'm not going to build another life that I have to destroy. I've already done that a couple of times. So I'm going to build something that I give a shit about.
This, I'm going to call it your concept from the book about being trapped, and people are trapped in different ways. And you could have been trapped by continuously doing that job that was maybe safe, like for the paycheck, for the job, for the insurance. And I think a lot of our listeners would definitely resonate with that, because they often, I mean, I know that especially in our South Asian culture, there are so many of us that try to go after that stability in the job. Like that's what our parents push us for, like educate yourself and then get into that stable job, that stable workforce. But then what do you do when you feel trapped? And I know you mentioned this concept a lot in the book. So what do people do when they may not have had the experience you're having, but there's some other form of feeling trapped?
Well, you can feel trapped in anything, right? It can be in a job. Right now, somebody listening feels trapped in a relationship.
Yeah.
Like they would love to get out, but they can't. They're in a job that they would love to quit, but they can't. They're in a house or an apartment that they would love to leave, but they can't. They're in a town that they would love to get out of, but they can't. All that can't stuff, right? And these are all constructs, right? Your life right now, everything that's happening is an end result of stuff that we've been doing over the past however long it's been. And it all started with what resides in the 6 inches between our ears, right? So your brain started it. Your brain can finish it, can change it, can do whatever. You need to understand how do I re-engineer everything?
Mm,
Because you did engineer everything that you're in right now. Whatever
yeah.
thing you're trapped in, you engineered that. There's a way to re-engineer something new.
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful. I mean, I don't know if, what do you say to the naysayers who say that, like, no, this happened to me. I didn't engineer it. This happened to me. I
Well,
got unlucky with this. This happened. And then that person did this to me. And then et cetera, et cetera.
well, all that it happened to me, they did this to me. This is all victim construct,
Yeah.
right? Nothing good happens from victim consciousness. And we can see that in the world today. The world doesn't really support an empowered position when we see what's broadcast and, through the news, put my air quotes around news. Um, it's really all designed to say, here's how you're a victim, here's what you need to think and feel about it, and here's who's to blame. And that feels really good to the ego to offload the responsibility. It's not my fault. I'll tell you what, none of my childhood or my history was my fault, right? It wasn't my fault that my father was who he was, and he was abusive and drank a lot and all these kinds of things. He was gone a lot. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that teachers were the way they were. Like, none of that was my fault. All of it, as it turns out, is my responsibility.
Mm,
That's a different thing, right?
yeah.
When I think of responsibility, that is ownership. That's empowerment. None of that stuff that happened to me may have been my fault, and all of it is my responsibility. It is nobody else's job in this world to give me the life of my design other than me, regardless of history or circumstances.
Mm. Wow. That's really powerful. Really, really powerful. So, how did you take your understanding of spiritual psychology and, this concept of re-engineering the mind and build this into the foundation for your business? Walk us through that.
Yeah, there's a foundational principle here that aligned with me. This is why I got into that program. So like, ooh, they seem to think how I think, and I want to know more about that. Essentially, instead of coming from the standpoint that I'm a human being that possesses a spirit or a soul or whatever you want to call it, I am an eternal soul that is having a human experience. And when I look through that lens, we can call this like Earth School. It's like the same way you have high school or something, right? You're
Yeah.
born, that's the first day of your freshman year. You die, that's the day you graduate, right? And everything in this life is, call it your spiritual curriculum, and you're going to learn these lessons. Now, me as my ego, my human construct of Chris M. King, I have no idea what that spiritual curriculum is. But whatever it is, I'm here to learn as much of it and check off as many boxes as I possibly can. And those lessons are going to come up through the jobs that I work, through the people that I date, through the friends that I have, through the situations that I'm in. And when I put myself in that position of empowerment, right? Ownership, how do I navigate this situation? What can I learn from this? How do I leverage this?
Mhm.
Right? Because it's not about good or bad, right or wrong. It's simply aligned or misaligned. How do I leverage that and align it with what I want to experience in this lifetime? I'm not even sure if I answered your question. When I go down these rabbit holes, I'm like, wait, did I answer your question?
All right. It's all right.
Tracking with me can be a little challenging
No, no, no.
sometimes.
I got you. I got you. So it fit in with your life experiences, with your understanding. Like, okay, translate this to your business foundation and how you got to where you're at.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all taking all of this. Like, we feature a science-backed approach, right? Like I said, I was in the Neuroscience Institute of a hospital. I trained with the
Yeah.
with all the best people in flow and brain stuff, right? So we offer a science-backed approach. We marry that with some of the philosophical and call it the spiritual stuff.
Mm.
Um, but ultimately, if you don't take full responsibility for something, you have no ability to affect it, right? Like, think about your cell phone for a second, right? If that's not your cell phone and it's sitting next to you and it goes off, you have no ownership of it, which means you have no influence over it. You're not really allowed to affect it in any way. The second you take ownership of something, you empower yourself to affect it. So even if something is not your fault, if you
Yeah.
decide it is my responsibility, well, you take ownership of it. Now you can affect that, and you can start moving things in a direction to get you the life that you want. And so That's what status flow was built around, is that, look, I have bent my reality many times. I was trapped in a marriage with a woman with a mental disorder that I could not get out of. And I found a way out. And I was trapped in soul-sucking jobs. And then I was trapped in no soul-sucking job, unemployed and broke. And I was trapped in it, like, outside. I think I've been trapped in pretty much every way there is, save for actually going to prison. That's the one that I've avoided. But you can break out of any of this. And step one is taking full responsibility for it.
Love that. What's step two? If you're going to say step one, I'm going to ask.
Right. Step two, that's where the wheels come off. What I say in this work is there's no sheet music for this. We are playing jazz. The way that I designed the company is oriented around a lot of flexibility. We have a ton of tools. We have a ton of modalities and concepts that are all science backed, and even things that I just made up because I understand how it works. But there's no templated process. First you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do that, because this is not a program.
Yeah.
What we're offering is to go along with somebody on their journey. We're not taking them on our program. They're asking us to come with them on their journey so that we can navigate with them those roads, whatever roads they come across, gravel or dirt or asphalt or, rivers or whatever they come across. We have the tools and know how to navigate that terrain. So we're going along them on their journey, and that is going to lead them to the discoveries about themselves and about their world and about how they relate to their world that is going to create the sustainable transformations that they're looking for. That's the shift that they're going to make in their life, whatever that looks like. Now, that might be something, in terms of their physical world reality, or it might be an experiential kind of thing, right? They might still live in the same house with the same people and whatever, but experience a completely different way. So, that's what it is you tell me what you want, because that's what we're going to do. Like, whatever it is. I don't care what it is. It just needs to mean something to you.
Yeah. So in terms of this concept of feeling trapped, the first step is taking full responsibility. And then after that, it's where do you want to be, and looking at different ways to get there, but starting that journey and that awareness of, I want to make a transformational shift.
Right. And my three questions, I guess step two is that I'll ask a client three questions. Question number one is, what do you want?
Yeah.
And then they'll answer it. And I say, okay, now question number two, what do you really want?
Mm-hmm.
And then they answer it. And they say, okay, question number three, what do you really, really want? Because the first two, they're typically sandbagging, right? They're telling me what they think is possible, or they're settling. But when I get them to really stretch out and give me their, okay, Chris, like they're actually almost defiant at this point, because now I'm pissing them off, which I do a lot. Like,
No,
what do you want? I want this. Say, okay,
that.
right? It's like, what do you want? Well, I want this. No, you don't. Who are you to tell me what I want? It's like, I've done this before, okay? I've been at this for a decade. I know that's not what you want. Go bigger. Well, okay, I really, this, that, and the other. Okay, now what is it really? Okay, fine. And then they hit me with it, and that's where there's energy. I'm like, now we're getting there. It doesn't matter what we work on. It matters that it means so much to you.
Yeah.
Because when you have that energy, I have the frequency that I need. I have the power that I need behind it, that you need behind it to make that happen.
Yeah. And that could be anything and everything. No judgment there as to what that is. That's
anything.
Yeah.
I don't even
absolutely anything.
It's right. It's not for me to say what is right or what is wrong. And I do know when somebody is not being 100 with me. And it's not because, there's the science of, which way does their eyes move and all that, and how many times they blink and all that kind of stuff. No, I know when somebody's not being honest with me, because I can tell by the frequency, right? This whole universe, none of it, it's not made of matter. It's made of energy, right? And all this rides on frequencies. And I might be wrong about situations or reasons or events. I'm never wrong about energy.
Energy. All right. I want to know a little, we could go down there, but what I really want to know more about is this company tagline you have, because I absolutely think it's fantastic. Status quo to status flow. So how'd you come up with that? And then we can we'll dig a little bit deeper. But where did that come from?
Well, it's just my kitschy marketing brain being, kind of tongue in cheek and funny or whatever. I think I threw it out as a joke actually, and then when I heard it, I went, "Oh, actually, that's not terrible."
So you weren't so bad at marketing after all.
I was a mediocre marketing guy, I mean, I was good, but I just, as soon as they start presenting me with like data, I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no." Target demographics. No, I don't want to talk about this stuff. But no, it was like, look, how do we achieve these goals and do it in a way that feels very flowy, that feels like we're just cooking with gas, that it feels effortless, that it really is about being in the zone. And most people live a life along the lines of the status quo.
Yeah.
It's like you mentioned earlier, it's like, okay, your parents tell you, okay, well, get the good grades. Why? So you can go to college. Why? So you can get a good job. Why? So you can get a good partner. Why? So you can buy a good house and have good kids. And then you're sitting there going, well, now what? I'm 45 and now what? I've checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
Now what? Right?
Why am I not happy? Like, what's happening? I'm at this midlife point and
right.
not feeling right.
Yeah, and something feels off. And I tell you, Aashi, one of my favorite quotes, Dr. Robert Holden, who was a teacher of mine, he said, if it seems like there's something missing from your life, it's probably you.
Mm.
And I was like, that's deep. And he's right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, and we've got people, a lot, even a lot of younger people listening in on this. I mean, had I understood this concept like a decade ago, or, like in my 20s, I guess I'm aging myself here, but I know my listeners probably know that I'm in my 40s. I'm at that midlife point, and I couldn't be happier. But I've gone and done this inner work and really worked through a lot of this. But wow, what could I have known in my 20s or 30s? What would you have wanted to know, Chris, in your 20s or 30s? That would it have changed anything? Would it have shaped anything differently?
Yeah, I think, the first thing that came to my mind as you asked me that question, what would I want to know? It would be myself.
Yeah.
I met my first wife when I was 23 years old. We got married when I was 27, divorced at 30, and I had a pretty damaged childhood. And then I, met and married this person with bipolar disorder, and so now I don't really know who I am. I haven't figured that out. Now I've got this to deal with. Then I got out of that, and I had all the damage to deal with from myself. I was really damaged from that. Not only was I damaged from that, but I hadn't done the healing from my childhood yet, right? So I got this compound interest effect on my damage. And then all I'm doing is medicating, right? I mean, I've done the addiction thing. So I went down that road for a while. I, partied my ass off and just pretty much everything you can imagine. And it wasn't until way later. And I tell you, I wish if there's one sliding door moment, right?
Yeah.
If I could go back in time kind of thing and tell myself, I'd say, look, take your 20s and figure out who you really are, not who you think you're supposed to be, not,
Really great advice. Yeah.
right. Not that, and we didn't really have this back then, but it's like right now I would tell somebody who's on TikTok and on the, doing all the social media stuff, and forget about what you think you're supposed to do and forget about what your ego desires are. The egoic desires are a different thing. You give me your deepest soul-centered, heartfelt truth about who you are and what you want. When you feel into that, you know exactly what you're about, and that becomes the filter for everything. Anything that does not match that frequency, that doesn't align with that, is a very easy no. And that's how your life gets real smooth, real quick.
Yeah, those boundaries, because it's not aligning with what you truly want and who you truly are.
Right?
Yeah.
Because most of the stuff in this world is not for you.
Yeah.
Right? Figure out the things that are absolutely for you. Now, if you're really psychologically damaged and screwed up like me, that's going to be a lot harder because, like for me, the addiction thing, it was like massive dopamine hits. And it's like, ooh, this feels incredible. This is for me. No, this is your cocaine talking, right? That's what dopamine is, right? Chemical in the brain hits the pleasure center. It's like cocaine. But anything that gave me that dopamine high, it can be it can be really misunderstood as to what was for me. So get healthy and then get clear about what your truth is.
I love that. I love that. So that must be also a strategy you work really closely with your clients on. So going back to flow, help us understand, like there's research behind flow. Um, can you define it for, for some people, even though they've heard the word flow, when we talk about flow theory and talking about even the relationship of flow in the workplace or with productivity or just in your life, like, let's start with defining it first.
Yeah, flow is that optimum state of consciousness where you feel your best, you perform your best, you're not stressed out, you're just channeling brilliance and performance as if it's effortless and nothing. And this is what athletes call being in the zone. It's known as runner's high. There's stand-up comedians will call it the forever box. It has a lot of different names. Um, but it's all driven by your neurochemistry. And so, and all humans can do this. They've studied this across everybody. You could be a plumber, you could be a Tibetan monk, you could be I mean, whatever.
Hmm.
Anybody can access what we call flow cycles. If you set the conditions and the behaviors in your life, in your organization, across your team, whatever, then you can produce the neurochemistry required. So it's really getting your psychology and your physiology to work for you instead of against you. And this is how you become a peak performing machine. You are hardwired for these flow states for peak performance. You just got to get out of your own way and do some very counterintuitive behaviors to make it happen.
You got to create some ruckus there.
Yeah, yeah, it's very disruptive, and a lot of the stuff that you want to do is very counterintuitive, actually.
Yeah.
Uh, but there are what we call flow triggers or flow switches. There are 22 of them that we know of right now, and so when you start,
22. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. Give
22.
us, yeah, give us some examples.
All right. Well, autonomy is a good one. If you're working in that job where you have a micromanager that's always on you and just you're never going to get into a flow state because people need to feel like they can steer their own ships and do it really well. So you got to have autonomy. There has to be novelty, right? Because of the way this lights up the creative centers of the brain, there has to be complexity. You need complete concentration. So these infernal cell phone things that we have are just flow killers because
Awful, awful.
right? It's a
Yeah,
massive distraction. So it takes
yeah,
about like 20 minutes. And I tell you, anybody listening right now has experienced this. I mean, you've
yeah.
experienced it. I experienced it in sports. I raced go-karts when I was a kid. I was a hockey player. Um, but you can do this maybe when you were playing the piano or working on a term paper in college. You sat down to write something and it felt like 30 minutes went by. You looked up, it was like 2.5 hours and you just
Yeah.
crushed it. You had this incredible thing. That's a lower level flow state. But
Wow.
that's where all the magic happens. That's where just things are awesome, firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned autonomy. Give us another example of a client that has discovered, kind of their optimum, like their flow triggers or getting to that optimum state to really engage in those peak performance cycles more and more.
The triggers are the same for everybody. How you access them though can vary pretty wildly.
Okay.
What is novelty to you is, humdrum to me and vice versa. So it's
Sure.
about understanding what this is for you. But what happens when you can do this, this is where you get super creative. This is where all the brilliance comes through, all the creative solutions to the problems that you don't know you have the answers for. They're all in there. So by getting the brain to operate correctly, um, this is how you're going to solve problems a lot faster and a lot easier using less energy to do it. So this is like solving problems when people say, "Oh, I get my best ideas in the shower." Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually because of the way your brain waves are and your neurochemistry is, and you can train yourself for that. I literally actually have clients. I have trained them to solve problems in their sleep. They will
Wow.
literally wake up
Yeah.
with the answer.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty powerful. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So tell us a little bit more about how to eat, like, what are some strategies in terms of trying to help in terms of getting into steps from, into flow?
Well, the big one is distraction, right? In this day
Okay.
and age, distraction is probably the first one that's going to be, and I start with this one because there are so many distractions
Yeah.
and there's so much competition for your attention. Um, and you need boundaries, right? You just need to be able to say no. I know a lot of business leaders, team leaders, owners, they say, I have an open door policy. My staff can come in and talk to me anytime. Well, you're a fucking idiot. Like, because that distraction is going to kill you. It's a flow killer.
Yeah.
So it requires boundaries. For me, I start to get annoyed if I don't set those boundaries. I don't put my phone on do not disturb and somebody keeps texting me or they come. I actually get annoyed with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
But they don't know that if you're opening it up and you're creating that level of approachability. So the boundaries
right.
you could set is like maybe there's other ways you can showcase as a leader as being approachable. For example, maybe it's the afternoons that stay closed off, or you are more open to taking certain one-on-one meetings, but still preserving like, hey, I need scheduled time, but I'm approachable instead of having that open door policy.
Right. The general concept, because I work in concepts because I can't really say this is the way you need to do it
Sure.
because different businesses, different people, different so the
Yeah.
concept is that you need to orient your life so that you're proactive about things. You need to be in charge of your life. You need to be in charge of your calendar because if it's in charge of you, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Right? It's never going to work. If you're like same with technology, right? Are you serving your technology or is your technology serving you? If your technology serving you, great. If you serving your technology, email's a killer, right? People jump into their emails and they start reacting to everything.
Yeah.
You're in react mode. When I get into my email, it's because, oh, I need to know that information from Aashi. I'm going to go to my email, look, Aashi, there she is, boom, read that one, and then I hit the eject button. I'm not going to get sucked in because now I'm being reactive, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to be proactive, intentional, and focused. You got to manage the distractions. Of course, at Satisful, we have tons of tools for this kind of stuff, way more than we could go down the rabbit hole here. But the concept that I'm talking about all comes back to that same thing. It's empowerment, right? And I'll tell you right now, because I know somebody's already doing it, I can't because, look, one of my favorite quotes, if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. So every time you tell me I can't because, all you're doing is advocating to maintain the status quo, to keep yourself on the hamster wheel. So you keep working 60 hours a week. I got a client that she wanted to take a 6-figure business to a 7-figure business. She said she wanted to be a digital nomad. She said she did not want to work more than 30 hours a week. She was at 55 at the time. And she said, I'd really like to find a husband if you could work it out. We knocked all that shit out in 9 months.
Wow.
She's just living in an alternate reality.
Yeah.
I mean, don't tell me you can't do it. I live in a city where people pay $30 for avocado toast. There is nothing crazier than that. If they can do that, you can do that.
Well, and I know you've talked about this on some of your other shows, and you've got your own podcast as well. The language we use, what we tell our brains, and it doesn't hear the word can't. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because I feel like that's another step and strategy into flow.
Yeah, this is a delivery vehicle for empowerment. It's the way we speak. Nietzsche was really smart about this. He understood that culture and language were tightly intertwined. He said you could tell where a society's been and where they're going by the way that they speak. And this is the same as true in a team or an organization. But in the United States, we speak what we call the language of fear and avoidance. And it's the way that we offload responsibility. And here's what it sounds like. I didn't have time. I can't afford it. Oh, I suck at that. I have no talent for that. I forgot. They didn't get back to me. All of this is offloading responsibility, right? So when we say I can't afford it, that is have or have not dynamic, right? When somebody looks through the lens of a have or have not dynamic, they tend to have not. I didn't have time. I don't have money. Right? These people never have time or money because this is the way they're holding it in their consciousness. But when you realize, I didn't have time, that's not the reason. That's the result. Right? This is how I'm going to make an excuse. I didn't have time. That's my offloading responsibility. But ultimately, I didn't have time as a result of what is that a result? I didn't prioritize correctly.
Right.
I didn't make time.
Right.
Now that I can affect. I cannot affect whether or not I have it, right? If you
Yeah.
have a paycheck, oh, I didn't have money, I don't have it. You know what? I haven't budgeted for that.
Right. Now you're taking that's that language of responsibility you were talking about earlier too. You're
Right.
taking
That's the language of
responsibility.
responsibility. Can't means won't,
Yeah,
right? You know, when you use the word but in the middle of a sentence, you can delete everything up to that word. Hey, Aashi, I really
absolutely.
want to have lunch with you, but I'm really busy. All I said was I'm really busy, right?
Yeah,
So when you start understanding, number one, what your inner script is saying to you and how it's affecting you in your world, how your outer speech is affecting others and you and the world and the collective world, right? And the neurochemistry that's driven. I mean, actually, I can affect your brain right now. I can physiologically change the way your brain works by changing
really?
one word in a sentence, right?
Yeah.
Think of something that
Okay.
you really want.
Think of something I really want.
Right. You don't have to say what it is. You
All
don't even have
right.
to say what it is. Just think of something that you
Okay.
really want, and there's some
Okay.
charge around not having it. Maybe you're a little frustrated or a little sad, or so it's like, oh, I really want that.
Yeah.
Now, think to yourself quietly, I just want whatever that thing is.
I just want. All right. Got it.
Okay. Now think it to yourself without the word just.
I want. Okay. Got it.
What do you notice about how that affects that feeling state when you think about it?
Well, it's definitely stronger. It's,
Stronger,
yeah, it's
right?
stronger.
There's a
But
measurable
I
difference.
almost create that just, and I know you've talked about this too, about minimizing language. It's almost like I
Yes.
create that minimizing word, but again, to offload the responsibility so that I don't, it's like protecting my ego that, oh, if it doesn't happen, it's okay. I'd already minimized the wanting, the desire of it to begin with.
Right. But the second you do that, you lose the charge for it and you basically
Yeah.
get you're not going to have it.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm
Right.
already putting myself in a
Because
position to not get it.
right. Because this is how people create, validate, and recreate the reality of their understanding. This is how they stay stuck.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? They perpetuate this unconsciously without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Right? I am little more than a systems hacker. Right? Everything is a system. You
Yeah.
know, a car is a system, a computer is a system, a business, a team, a person. These are all systems. And any system can be hacked and recoded if you understand that system well enough.
You're an engineer as well. I didn't mention that in the bio when I first
A little
started.
bit, yeah. That's it. I'm in the resource management business. I'm in the systems hacking business. That's my job.
So, wow. Yeah. So, okay, the language we use, really powerful step here.
Mhm.
Another one that I know you got me into is thinking about mindfulness, but really specifically meditation. Can you
Hmm.
speak to a little bit as to when that came in for you and when you realized, hey, this is really an important part of this puzzle from status quo to status quo?
That's a good question. I'd heard about meditation so many times because I run in kind of the woo-woo circles in West Side of LA. It wasn't until for me, when for somebody to really reach me, they need credibility with me in some way, shape, or form. And I think it was Stephen Kotler. I got to spend some time with Stephen. He's like my spirit animal. He's the founder of the Flow Research Collective. And he's just done amazing work. He wrote a book called Stealing Fire with Jamie Wheel. Jamie's at the Flow Genome Project, also somebody that I've worked with, um, done some of their programs and things. But I think it was Steven that had said something about that where it really landed because he had so much credibility with me. That's when I started actively engaging in that, and I can't say enough about it. I mean, and I'm not talking about half hour or a full hour of sitting full
Right.
lotus, right,
Yeah.
just. I mean, I've said, look, you give me 4 minutes of your morning, 5 days a week for the next 30 days, I will change your life, and I have yet to lose that bet.
Yeah, yeah, really, really powerful. So for the novices, what would that look like? What do they got to do, Chris?
Well, first, you got to understand what meditation is and what meditation isn't.
Okay.
Right now, somebody's going, "Oh, I can't meditate. I suck at it. I can't quiet my brain."
Hmm.
First, you're wrong. Second, that's not what meditation is. Okay, you can't suck at meditation. You can either do it or not do it. You can't suck at it. Um, what meditation is not is quieting the mind. the way the human brain works, it's a very noisy place. You're not going to be successful in quieting your mind, at least not for quite some time. What you will be successful at is noticing the noise. And that is what meditation is. So think of it this way. Think of sitting on the side of a river or lake or something, and you're staring across the other side. You have a lazy gaze. You're not really looking at anything in particular, but you're staring across the other side, and these boats start floating by. Maybe there's one, two, several at a time. They're going left to right, right to left, at different sizes, shapes, colors, whatever. You notice all these boats. You don't get on any of the boats. You notice them, and then they just float away. This is exactly what meditation is. Each one of those boats is a thought. And it could be the random weirdest stuff. You might think about the car you drove in high school, or somebody you dated, or somebody you're planning on calling, or think about your mom, or what. I mean, just all, you're going to notice how noisy it is in there. About completely unimportant stuff sometimes. I went on what must have been a 5-minute thought stream that started with a minivan that I saw at a gas station, and it just went about 5 minutes later. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? But so what that looks like, you might say, okay, I noticed that I'm thinking about the car I drove in high school. Okay, great. Oh, I noticed that I'm thinking about how my car right now is really dirty. I need to get it washed. Okay, let that go. Okay, and now I noticed that I'm thinking about that client. Now, when you get on the boat, it's like, okay, I noticed that I'm thinking about that client. Oh, and I got to make sure I remind them to send me that email. Oh, and I got to ask them about that and make sure that that gets done. And now, okay, so now I've gotten on the boat and I've engaged with it. So come back to the shore, remember your breathing, and let it go, right? It's all training in awareness. And the benefits of this are, I mean, I can't say enough about this. It's just meditation, good, do it, period, end of story. I mean, there's physiological, there's emotional, psychological, there's all the things, right?
So it's critical when you're talking to your clients about getting to a state of more flow. That this is an important piece. So we've talked about distractions, we've talked about the language we use, mindfulness. What's something else? What's another flow hack?
Oh, well, there aren't what I would call hacks. I would say this much. You need to challenge what you think is possible. Because that will ultimately be the deciding thing on whether or not you achieve your goal. I tell clients this all the time when they bump up against that trap thing. Oh, I can't get out of this house. I can't. We got an income and the kids and whatever. I can't quit my job. I have to be here because this, that, and the other. I say, I understand. I hear you. I get it. Makes perfect sense. It's totally logical. And what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? What if there is a way? And we have tools for this too. I mean, I've gotten people out of stuff by going to, there's a tool that I call Banana World. We go to Banana World and it's incredibly effective because it's a way of
Banana World. Yeah, talk to us about Banana World.
Banana World is a way of getting your brain physiologically functioning differently. Somebody says, for example, I had a client that was trapped in a difficult relationship, kids, house, the whole thing, job, whatever. And she said, I can't, stuck. I said, okay, what if you're wrong? So let's go to Banana World. Banana World is a world in your imagination where there are no rules. There are no laws. Even the laws of physics don't necessarily apply. Just be completely ridiculous. And so what I said to her was, give me one thing, nothing real, nothing that you would ever actually do. Give me something that if you did it, you would no longer be in that house, in that job, in that situation. And she thought for a moment. She said, well, I could fake my death and move to Costa Rica. Yes. Yeah. If you faked your death and moved to Costa Rica, you would not be in that house anymore. That is absolutely true. What else? Yeah. Right? And she started coming up with these ridiculous ideas that are just not viable in the real world, right? But here's the weird thing that happens. The more you start to play in Banana World and the funnier it gets and the more absurd that it gets, you start getting these dopamine hits. Right? Because this is fun, and your brain starts physiologically operating and firing differently. The neurotransmitters are firing differently. And the weirdest thing happens, Aashi, is that the longer we do this, these viable elements start to sneak their way into the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't do this. I would never do this. I would never do that. Like, well, you know what I would do, though? I could do. And she
Yes.
started coming up with ways to create some space for herself. And this got the bolt turning, right? It didn't
Yeah.
immediately answer the question, but she came up with an idea where I think it was she had a sister in the city kind of thing. She's like, you know what? I could spend 2 nights a week with my sister in the city. And while she's still living in the house with the situation, this gave her a break. This gave
Yeah.
her a reprieve. And now she can breathe a little. She's emotionally regulated. Now I'm cooking, right? So it's all about leverage. How do I make this work? How do I get this person's physiology to work for them in ways that they don't even know?
Love that. I love that. That's a
Might be my
really
favorite
cool
tool. I love
technique.
Banana World. It's so much
Banana
fun.
World, that's super fun. And I like what you also said there, and I know you've spoken about this. I think you have it in the book as well around challenging your belief system. So talk a little bit about that, as it relates to results and outcomes.
Wow. Okay. So essentially where do I start with this? Try and keep it simple. People are going out into the world and unconsciously, actively seeking to validate and recreate the reality of their understanding, which is the one that they exist in, right?
Yeah.
We are actively trying to prove that this is real every day. And we make the same decisions every day. That's why you're going to make like 37,000 decisions today, and the overwhelming majority of them are completely unconscious. And this is why today is the same as yesterday, and tomorrow will be the same as today. So there is a roadmap to how reality unfolds. And it all starts with this thing in our head, call it our operating system. Just like a phone or a computer has an OS, so does a human. We call it a belief system. And that individual is the sole architect of that system. It's
Yes.
been running. They wrote it when they were about 6 years old, was about the time it was done. And it's been on autopilot ever since. And so the system in our head creates every thought we have. We experience the thoughts as feelings. The feelings drive our actions. The actions produce the results. And the results are unconsciously designed to validate the system that started it. So you got this feedback loop running around and around and around.
Yeah.
So what you got to do is when you don't have the result that you want, it's not that you're stupid or that you screwed up. You have what we call an alignment problem. Something in that loop is out of alignment with the reality you want because it's producing the reality you have. So you can start re-engineering this, right? How do I reverse engineer another loop over here so that I can create the reality that I want instead of the one of my understanding that I have? So you have to challenge what you think is real. You have to challenge what you think is possible. And all that I can't. That's why I come up with, what if you're wrong?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're wrong, maybe you can have that thing that you really want.
So challenging that belief system that's putting you into the same loop over and over again. You got to disrupt that.
It's really hard to do because it's basically what I say is you're basically working on the car that you're driving, right? Because you're using the system in your head to hack the system in your head. That's why somebody like you or me have a job, right? Because we're sort of the mechanic on the outside of the car. But the idea ultimately is to figure out what is the system that will create the thoughts that generate the feelings that produce that drive the actions that produce the results that validate the system of the reality I want. And how do I go out in the world and consciously see if I can verify this? I'll give you an example. Have you ever noticed that, in my world, the woman that I've always known, some woman in my life that says there are no good single men out there, right? Well, she's perpetually single, right? Because that's her whole system. She doesn't believe it, right? If you don't believe in unicorns, you're never going to find one, right? So in order for her to get the relationship she wants, she has to go, okay, I believe he's out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to find him, right? And she'll start looking for him. And just the way you prove the reality of your understanding, you're going to prove the reality of your desire as well.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Chris, we could quote so many things from like everything you've said here. Your next book could be a book of quotes. But going back to your first one, renegotiate your existence, unlock your impossible life. I mean, what was the impetus for writing that?
Well, I did it. I was a marketing guy in tech. That's where I came up. And one day I So it's a long story that I won't bore you with, but I ended up on the radio with Ryan Seacrest one day in the studios here in LA in Burbank. And I got home that night and everything in my life felt wrong. I had this epiphany that I was in the wrong house, I was in the wrong town, I was in the wrong career, I was in the wrong life, and I needed to go after this crazy dream of being a radio DJ, which is a stupid idea because you're never going to get that job. It's impossible. There's a million people out there and a very small, very few jobs that you can actually get. And even when jobs do open up, they know exactly who's going to fill that seat. I mean, it was like, it's an impossible and stupid idea. Radio pays virtually nothing. So it's all around a horrible idea. And I made it happen. I was a morning show jock. It was Chris King in the morning. I was on major market radio for 10 years. That's impossible. There's no way that's going to happen. I was going to be the one. And the things I had to do to make it happen were not fun, was not easy. But I was on a mission. There was no way. This was one of those, I will die before I let this go. And the universe said, that guy's serious. All right, we better give it to him before he kills himself, right? But that's what it was. It was a moral imperative. I was not going to go to my deathbed without knowing whether or not I could do it. And I made that happen. And the same thing happened. I was not a clinician. I was not, I had no background in the medical field. My mother worked for the Red Cross. That's as close as I got to the medical industry. Well, now fast forward, there I was working in the Neuroscience Institute of a hospital. Just figure it out. Don't tell me you can't. There's all number of reasons. I didn't have a 4-year degree. I'd never worked in a hospital. I didn't like any number of reasons I could be absolute that made perfect sense that were so logical as to why I could never make that happen. And I just shot down everyone and said basically, yeah, well, fuck it. I'm going to do it anyway.
So that was about the book. Like you were going to write the book.
Yes. So it's like, look, I renegotiated my entire existence. Several times. I got into a marriage. I thought I could never get her. I got out of a marriage. I thought I could never get rid of her. I got into another marriage. I thought I'd never get her and did the same thing again. And then the job and then the other job and then the school. And then don't tell me you can't. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Yes, you can.
So who's this book for?
Whoever's ready. Like what's out of place? What part of your life is not what you came here to this planet for? Like, what did you come here for? Like, did you come here to write something, to play something, to sing something, to climb something, to build something? What did you come here for? And why aren't you doing it? My theory is that at the end of my life, I'm going to be shown the life that I was supposed to live. And I do not want that to be too far away from the one I did.
Wow. So powerful, Chris. That's incredible. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, we're going to have to close soon. I feel like we could go for a long time. I could dig into a lot of those. You probably are like such a master storyteller too. And when we get you back on the show, because we will, we're gonna get into some of those stories.
I'm happy to do it. Getting me to talk is easy, and getting me to shut up, that's the challenge.
Well, no, really, we really appreciate your time here today. I am just so grateful for having someone like you in my life and being able to kind of share you with the world here. Literally, our audiences from all around the world. Any last things you'd like to add for our listeners here today?
Just thank you. Thank you so much. You've been such a part of my journey as well. I've gotten so much from you and knowing you and being in your sphere. And so I have so much gratitude for all of this. Like I said, I can't imagine where I might be right now if I hadn't gone for it and done this. And I just feel very, very grateful.
It's awesome. And me and many others are also very grateful that you are doing this, running this fabulous organization and sharing your wisdom and all that you have. When's the next book coming out?
That's a good question. I don't know. I was so over rewriting mine. I was like, I'm so over myself. I don't ever want to read this again. I don't know. I probably it'll probably be another year or so, I think. But
Oh, not bad, not bad. So there is
I'm
something
noodling
on
on
the
it. Yeah,
forefront.
it's definitely brewing.
All right, very cool. We'll look forward to that. Then we'll definitely be talking again when that book gets written for sure. All right,
Thank
Chris,
you.
thank you so much for being such a great guest. And to all my listeners out there, thank you, Ruckus Avenue Radio, for this opportunity for us to be on the show, Leaders Creating Ruckus. This is Aashi Arora signing off. Bye-bye.